Tonight on 7, President Biden on a high-stakes trip to Europe as the invasion intensifies. Millions of Ukrainians on a journey to safety.
My heart is broken. In Mariupol is a humanitarian catastrophe.
We didn't want to fight with anyone.
What do you miss most about being at home in Ukraine?
In Ukraine, it's good to stay because it is my home.
The night team in Poland with their stories and the latest on the war in Ukraine.
A 7 News photographer and I just returned home from Poland last night. First we went to Krakow and then we traveled to the border cities of Przemyśl and Medyka to hear the first-hand accounts of Ukrainians seeking refuge from this war. I'll have my report in just a few minutes, but first let's get to the night team's Michael Yoshida. He's here in the newsroom with more on President Biden's trip overseas. Michael?
President Biden has arrived in Europe with new sanctions and new military deliveries as the United States is now branding Vladimir Putin's troops as war criminals.
Russian forces are indeed committing war crimes in Ukraine.
The United States accusing Russian forces of committing war crimes in Ukraine, citing the shelling and bombing of civilian targets like schools, apartment buildings, a maternity hospital, and the theater, where it was clearly marked that women and children were gathered. President Biden landing in Europe ahead of a special NATO summit Thursday. Biden is expected to announce fresh sanctions on members of the Russian Duma, Russia's equivalent of the U.S. House of Representatives. The move comes as Ukrainian forces appear to be making some gains, pushing back on some Russian forces close to the capital. The Ukrainians have reclaimed Makariv, a short drive west from Kyiv. The move comes as NATO estimates up to 15,000 Russian troops have been killed during the invasion. Still, Putin's spokesman says everything is going according to plan.
About special military operation that is going on, and it is going on strictly in accordance with the plans and with purposes that were established beforehand.
In Mariupol, the United Nations humanitarian chief has labeled the city the center of hell in Ukraine. Daily bombardments leave much of the city now in ashes, and new aerial images reveal widespread destruction from relentless Russian attacks.
I've got elderly parents and 4 pets that I will not leave.
Amidst the destruction of a once peaceful neighborhood in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, where around 1,000 buildings have already been destroyed, a cellist's playing rings through the ruins in hopes to raise awareness and funds to help restore his city. And the White House says the first deliveries of the $800 million in new U.S. military aid have been delivered to Ukraine. This as Ukrainian President Zelensky is calling for worldwide demonstrations supporting his country as the Russian invasion hits the 1-month mark. Live in the newsroom tonight, Mike Yoshida, 7 News Night Team.
More than 3 million refugees have already left Ukraine, nearly all headed to neighboring countries. And according to the UN, more than 2 million of them have fled to Poland. We were there at the border of Ukraine and Poland as hundreds of refugees crossed over into Poland. The stories we heard were heartbreaking at times, but also inspiring at others. In Krakow, Poland, I met countless families on a journey to safety, like Helen, so overcome with emotion you couldn't resist giving her a hug.
We didn't want to fight with anyone.
To escape the violence, she left her job as a teacher, most of her belongings and loved ones. Did you leave family or friends behind in Ukraine?
Yes. My stepmother and my father and my husband.
How do you get through this? Is it faith? Is it family? How do you do it?
Oh, it's okay. I'm sure we will win. And after our victory, come to our wonderful country.
Although Helen is dealing with uncertainty right now, her spirit is strong. She has a sense of hope for a brighter future, something we saw time and time again while traveling across Poland. We drove to the town of Przemyśl, just 8 miles from the Ukrainian border. For most, this is their first stop after escaping the Russian bombings and devastation in their homeland. I'm in Ukraine now, crossing into Poland. This is Medyka. It's the biggest and busiest border crossing
where so far more than 2 million Ukrainians have come.
Those we saw walking across the border, mostly mothers, grandmothers, and children. Some embracing the comfort of a teddy bear.
Вот my mama, my son, my sisters here.
Ukrainian refugees pulling their luggage behind them or pushing their few modest possessions in shopping carts.
The journey was pretty hard.
Roman made it all the way from Kyiv to Krakow, about 550 miles. He had stocked up on gasoline and food, preparing for the eventual bombs that would drop, which they did.
We just grabbed all our baggage and ran away from Kyiv.
The father of three is grateful for the people of Poland.
They gave us food and the place where we can stay at the night.
He is now helping to drive other refugees to shelter because Roman, like Helen and so many others, feels these are temporary new beginnings, not permanent ones. Ukraine will always be their home.
For sure, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to stay here because I'm Ukrainian and I love my country.
Roman, who we heard from, was able to leave Ukraine with his 3 kids due to a unique family situation because most men ages 18 to 60 are not allowed to leave so that they can stay in Ukraine and fight. Tomorrow night, I'll be showing you the extraordinary help for refugees in Poland, irregular people traveling from countries around the world offering to do whatever they can to help all of those in need. Plus, we will introduce you to a mother, her 5 children, and the complete strangers who took them in and are letting them stay there however long they need. That's all tomorrow night, and we'll have more stories from our trip to Ukraine's border with Poland all week long right here on the news station.